Lloyd Vance's Insider Football is back for another week. Welcome to week 8 around the National Football League. I'm Lloyd Vance, your host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football here on 102.9 The Game and a Broad Street South Network. Very glad to be back with you this evening, and lots to talk around the National Football League. It's, time's going quickly around the league, and it's a situation where it's too quick and it's still even too early to make season-long assertions based upon what we have seen already. I know the trade deadline is tomorrow, and we'll talk about that and a lot of other things with Ryan Neff when he joins in a few minutes. But, when you look around the league, I still think that everybody still has an opportunity to get some damage done. And I always caution everybody to say, wait until around this type of year before November when you really start looking at, okay, what teams really have a shot, don't have a shot. Just last year, after week 8, the Jacksonville Jaguars were 2-6, and then they went on to make the playoffs. So it just shows you how quickly things can change around the National Football League. And speaking of things quickly changing around the league, there were a couple games that were true surprises, and what we thought teams were about 2-3 weeks ago, where we were saying, okay, they're Super Bowl contenders. They may not be, and we'll get into that. Particularly talking about the San Francisco 49ers. They've lost 3 straight games, and they had a very tough loss at home where they lost to the Cincinnati Bengals 31-17. And when you start thinking, okay, this league, what's going on, you don't. And that was one of the games we'll get into. We'll also talk about one of the biggest surprises around the league. And nobody saw this one coming. I know it was a survivor pool special, and a lot of people got knocked out on this one. The Kansas City Chiefs, they snap a 16-game winning streak versus the Denver Broncos. And the Broncos now are 3-5. They're still in the mix. So another game we'll have to talk about. And we're now joined, though, by Ryan Neff. And there's a couple things I want to hit on with him. Big thing, Ryan, is what did you think about the throwback uniforms? Everybody's talking about seeing the old Oilers uniforms on the Titans in Nashville, Tennessee. And there's some people upset in Houston as they still remember their Love You Blue. And the Titans, a.k.a. the Oilers, played very well this week, so they were a national story, and we'll get to them in a minute. But what did you think about the throwback uniforms?
I mean, it took me back to my childhood, the 70s and then the 80s and then the early 90s. There's nothing like those uniforms, man. So, I know they're just throwback uniforms now, but I was so disappointed way back when Bud Adams moved them from Houston into Nashville, and there was nothing like those uniforms. Wasn't particularly an Oilers fan per se, but it was nothing like it with Houston and Pittsburgh and Cleveland and Cincinnati, all being in that same division. And I thought it was fantastic. I think they should do more of it, but they're not the Oilers anymore per se. So, but it's and then even with the Dolphins yesterday with their old unis, there's just something about them,
Yeah, and it brings you back to the glory days of these teams. And I think, to be honest with you, a lot of the teams have, they're trying to keep up with the Oregon Ducks in terms of the way they're making these uniforms up and all that stuff. I still like the classics, and I'm here in Philadelphia, and when they put on the Kelly green and you start thinking about all the greats that wore those uniforms, and of course they didn't win anything then, but beloved to so many people here in the Philadelphia area. They think of Reggie White, Jerome Brown, all those guys back in the 90s that wore those uniforms. And I do think, yes, why not let them wear them much more? And the funny thing is, Ryan, later on, when the Titans host the Houston Texans, they're going to trot out those Oilers uniforms. So that's going to be something that's going to be, that's going to stick it to the folks in Houston. And they are still hurting from losing their Astrodome and their team, and yeah, the Texans are there, but a lot of people I talked to from that area says it just is never going to fill a place in their heart. Bum Phillips, Earl Campbell, Dan
Yep.
Pastorini, all those guys. So, I wanted to get your take on that. Another big thing, Ryan, is the trade deadline is tomorrow, and a big thing is everybody said, "Oh, this guy's going. He has a chance to be traded and everything." And Kirk Cousins goes down with the Achilles injury; he's done for the season. But surprisingly, I talk about twists and turns before you came on. The Vikings now are 4-4, and they're back in the mix of things. So what do you think of this injury, and do you think that it's really going to turn the season, not turn the season for the Vikings?
Well, I mean, it'll be interesting to see where the Vikings turn to. Are they going to stick with what they have and just let it play out? Because they're 4-4. If the Lions lose tonight, they're 5-3, which puts the Vikings only a game out. I mean, I picked the Vikings to win this division, but again, it'll be interesting to see if they're going to try and wheel and deal, if they're going to bring other people in for tryouts. Obviously, it's a big blow because he was playing at a good level, even though I was one of those guys who thought that the experiment was over with him. It just wasn't working, but they seem to have turned a corner. Jordan Addison stepping up in the place of Justin Jefferson. So, I don't know who they could bring in. I don't know if they want to get on the phone with Matt Ryan. I hear Carson Wentz being thrown out there, but that's not going to happen.
Oh,
So,
that'll
yeah,
throw their season away. Bringing
yeah.
him in.
So it'll just be interesting to see where they go if they're just going to stick with what they have. There's not a lot out there, to be quite honest with you. So my gut
Yeah,
instinct,
and
my gut instinct is to think that they're probably just going to ride it out.
yeah, and Nick Mullins is on their team. He's a veteran type of guy. He's been out with an injury, but he's going to be available in Week 10. And then Jaron Hall from BYU. You're a college football guy, and he played pretty well for BYU out there. Okay arm. He can do some of the RPOs things. So maybe they'll give him an opportunity as well. So the trade deadline did have something today before tomorrow's deadline at 4 p.m. Eastern. It was the New York Giants sending defensive tackle Leonard Williams to Seattle Seahawks for a 2024 second rounder and a 2025 fifth rounder. And I think, this may be the extent of the big trades that we see because with so many teams being in contention, they just don't want to help each other out at this point. And you talk about the twists and turns. Last year, Jacksonville 2-6 after week 8, and then they turned around and went on a run. And that's what every team still think that they can do. There are a couple, obviously, the Arizona Cardinals 1-7. They're done, and we'll talk about Carolina in a minute. They did get their big win. They're 1-6, so they're out of it. And then you have your 2-6 teams, New England, the Giants. I do believe that Dayball has kind of said, "All right, we're 2-6. We're not going anywhere." Trade Leonard Williams. Let's see what we can do. Him and Joe Shane in the future. That's our general manager. And then you have Chicago 2-6, and we saw them come back down to earth with their rookie quarterback. So, what do you think? Anything will happen at the trade deadline?
Well, we I talked about it earlier today, and especially after yesterday's game, is if the Kansas City Chiefs do not go out and get a stud number one receiver, they are not going to go back to the Super Bowl, flat out. You can see it. I said it in the preseason. Brett Veach did nothing in the offseason. He was like, we did it last year. There's no reason why we can't do it this year. But you can see it. And Travis Kelce, he's getting older. He can't carry that kind of workload anymore. I understand Mahomes was sick yesterday, but if the Chiefs don't do something, I don't know if you're going to see any like huge, big impact moves, unless something wows us in like the 11th hour. But I mean, I'm sure there'll be little like things here and there. But I
Right.
don't know if Derrick Henry hasn't been getting a lot of like love from other teams. Some of the other players that I thought might get love are not getting love. So we'll just have to wait and see. But I don't know if there's going to be any of those like jump out you like trades
Yeah,
like
like baseball. Everybody, all my emailers always about baseball. Oh, they grab this closer, the starter at the trade deadline. We saw Verlander traded a couple of years ago at the trade deadline, and that helped spur the Astros to the World Series victory. But I just, in the NFL, these coaches are so competitive with each other, and we know injuries can turn a roster real quick, that they want to keep guys around even if they're not going to use them. Like the Eagles per se, where I am. Derek Barnett is on their roster, former first rounder. He's really not playing. He's been inactive a lot. They said, yes, they may have him out there, but, it's going to take something to wow them. And when you have a veteran in front of him, a guy like Brandon Graham, you worry about injuries and this sort. So, yeah, keep him around just in case. So we'll see how it goes. And all right, Ryan, well, yeah, let's jump right into these games. And you talked about one of the key games, and I'll start right there. I know this Kansas City is your team. What a crazy game! I watched this one, and you're right. Pat Mahomes did not look like himself. He said he had the flu all week, and he tried his best out there. I thought he gave it a good go. 24 of 38, 241 yards. He didn't have any touchdowns. He did have 2 interceptions. That was the first time he didn't have any touchdown passes since December 5th of 2021. The biggest thing I thought with the game was they were 0-3 in the red zone. Yeah, they did get some Harrison Butker field goals. He had 3 of them, but they're 0-3 in the red zone. And then it was just shocking. Denver just hung around in this game. Russell Wilson was sacked 5 times in this game, and he had 2 fumbles. He lost one. But Denver hangs around, and as you said, the receivers did not help Kansas City, in particular McCole Hardman, who they just brought over. Huge muff punt in that game that kind of turned that one around deep in their own territory. And then I don't know if he had any drops, but Sky Moore had a very bad drop on 4th down, right in the end zone, right in his hands. And you could see the dejection in Patrick Mahomes' face. He's like, oh, man, we're not winning this game.
Yeah, I mean, you can't turn the ball over 5 times either.
Yes.
I think it was a combination of, okay, we've been through this before. Patrick Mahomes was 12-0 on the road in the AFC West all time. But again, can't turn the ball over 5 times. They only rushed the ball 16 times for 62 yards. The Broncos rushed it 40 times for 153 yards. And, it was just, you can't really, it was just a combination of everything, LV. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The Broncos, they had nothing to lose. You know what I mean? And I thought maybe Kansas City was looking a little bit ahead to Germany. So, Broncos, thought they were dead, right back in it now with the way the crazy NFL season has gone. And I said earlier, if Kansas City goes to Germany and plays against the Dolphins the way they just played against the Broncos, they're going to get blown off the field.
Yeah.
Their defense isn't that bad. Their defense is fantastic.
Yeah, Spagnuolo's doing a very nice job there, and he lost Bolton to that wrist injury, but he's finding different players and guys to kind of step up and make plays. Karlaftis, the defensive end, he had a sack and a forced fumble in the 4th quarter. That was big in the game, and you can see they're getting pressure, and the secondary is playing a lot better. It's almost like a no-name defense for those guys. They don't have the big name other than Chris Jones, but they're doing a nice job. And you're right, it was. They didn't run the ball. Pacheco only had 8 rushes for 40 yards, and they kept trying to throw it. And you could see his disappointment over and over again as his guys were hanging him out to dry. Yes, Kelsey had 6 catches, 58 yards, but there just was not a lot of jump in his team. And yeah, you wonder if they were looking past them since they beat them 16 straight times or whatever it was. But, when I look at Denver, they're 3-5 now. They're in the mix, and they've had a 2-game winning streak, which is crazy. At a certain point, everybody was saying, oh, Russell Wilson's done. They need to make a trade, or cut him at the end of the season. Well, they're back in the mix, and Sean Payton's not as bad coach as everybody said. And then we look at Denver. They're going into their bye. Then we'll see. They're at Buffalo. They have Minnesota at home. They have Cleveland at home. Then they're at Houston, and then they're at the Chargers. So we're going to find out who Denver is the next couple of weeks. And I don't see them doing a lot at the trade deadline in terms of turning that roster over. They're going to try to keep Surtain and all their big pieces there. And then when you talk about the Chiefs, it is all about this big trip over to Germany. And we talked before about the NFL wanting that money. It was in London before. Now they're going to Germany for 2 games, and this is the first one. It's crazy because this is the marquee game everybody wants to see. It's the Tariq Hill Bowl. Tariq Hill versus his old squad. It's technically a Kansas City home game, so it's Kansas City hosting Miami. Um, what do you think early on about that game?
Well, again, I mean, Kansas City's going to have to try and figure something out offensively because other than that Chicago game, which everybody looks good against, they just really haven't put it together. They're just they just look off. They look lost. Kelsey's going to do his thing, but again, Eric Bieniemy's gone. So, I put some of the onus on Andy Reid. I
Right.
thought some of the play calling yesterday was he tries to get too cute. I know in Philadelphia he was criticized. He was
Oh yeah.
criticized in Philadelphia for being too conservative, but now I think he just tries to outthink himself. There was a couple of, like, 3rd and 2s in there where they tried to, like, throw some bubble screen, and
Right.
you're not going to do that in the NFL. I mean, unless you had Tyreek Hill. So
Yeah, and the jet sweeps and all that stuff, and the
yeah,
wide splits and all that. Why not line up behind Trey Smith, who's one of the best in the league, run right behind him, and their center is one of the best in the league, right up that middle. Go behind those guys and churn those first downs. But they just seem to get enamored too much with the pass. I know it's a passing league, and everybody says I'm old school and that it's not the game I grew up with, obviously, but there are key situations in the game where you have to show your physicality and rush the football and control the clock. And that's what Denver did in this one. In key situations, they went to Javonte Williams. He had 27 rushes for 85 yards. They kept the chains moving, and they kept the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands. And you tip your cap to them. They have the big 24-9 victory, and we'll see where Denver goes now. The other game that was extremely, one of the games that was on everybody's radar is here they go again. The Dallas Cowboys are 3-0 at home. They get that home cooking, and they come off a bye, and they just blow the doors off the Rams, 43-20. They knocked Matthew Stafford out of the game with a thumb injury. Dak Prescott 25 at 31, 80% completion, 304 yards, 4 TDs, only 1 interception. He throws it to 8 different receivers. Yeah, he was sacked 3 times, but they were in total control of this game. And CD Lamb, you have to also talk about him: 12 catches, 158 yards, 2 touchdowns. So Dallas once again shows in the Jerry Dome they're one of the best out there.
yeah. I mean, we talk about balance in the NFL. Prescott with 31 attempts passing. They rushed the ball 26 times for 102 yards. So there's great balance offensively, and you turn it over to your defense. Defense played well. I thought in the third quarter they got a little bit lackadaisical. They took their foot off a little bit,
Yeah.
and then they just put the foot on the gas again. So, these are the types of games you expect Dallas to dominate and win. Because let's face it, the Rams aren't what they were 2 years ago. So, we'll see what happens against the Eagles. This will be a real test for both these teams to see where they're at. So.
Yeah, and Dallas, as you said, this is the other marquee matchup coming up week 9, and I know everybody here in Philadelphia, it's Dallas week. They're coming in, and everybody's going to be rolling out the old Buddy Ryan and Jimmy Johnson footage, and talk about the Pork Chop Bowl and all those other big games against Dallas. And it's going to be interesting to see, can Dak go on a road and get a win, because he's 2-2 on the road, and he just is not the same quarterback in terms of turnovers. He turns the football over an alarming rate. And a big thing for them, yeah, they're going to get Tyron Smith back for this game. But the Eagles' defensive line can get after people, and I think that's going to be a huge difference in this game. So we'll talk about that one in a few minutes. We'll give the overall preview on that one. The other big shocker was, well, it wasn't really a shocker to me because I kind of saw this one coming, and I picked it, and the Cincinnati Bengals, everybody counted them out. They're now 4-3. They have a winning record, and they've turned it around once again, just like they did last season. Have a huge victory, 31-17, out in Santa Clara against the Niners, who are kind of reeling. The Niners now have lost 3 straight games. And, we thought they were the number one team in the NFL, and that defense is allowing a ton of yards up and down the field against them. And Brock Purdy, he's going to be my lackey this week. And he just did not look himself. He came out of concussion protocol on Saturday, which once again, did they game the system? Should they have put Sam Darnold out there? You wonder. Purdy 22 31. He did have 365 yards passing. He only had one touchdown, two interceptions, and a big fumble in this game. And he missed a lot of big throws down the stretch when it mattered most. And now Kyle Shanahan, when they're trailing by 8 or more in the fourth quarter, they are 0 and 37, this team. So his teams cannot come back if they don't have the big lead, and they kind of let that defense pin their ears back. So, what did you think about this Niners team, and are they truly in trouble?
Well, we both picked the Bengals last week, so there's just something off with the 49ers right now. It's almost like that Browns game got into their head because they could have won it in the last couple seconds. I know they missed a field goal, but I think Purdy's regressed a little bit. I think now you're starting to see defensive coordinators figure him out, figure what he's all about, what his tendencies are. And again, with the Bengals, yes, I think San Francisco's in a bit of trouble now. And with the Bengals, they're healthy. Joe Burrow's healthy. This team's getting healthy. Chase, Mixon, Higgins, Boyd, and Burrow yesterday. This is the kind of performance that we expect out of Joe Burrow. 28 out of 32, 283, three touchdowns, but more importantly, no picks. And when this team, both offensively and defensively, is rolling, I said this before, even when they were like 1-3, watch out, because when they get healthy, I still think they're the team to beat in the AFC.
Yeah, and Orlando Brown's playing real well at the left tackle position for him. He came over from the Chiefs. He's holding it down, and Burrow, as you said, is looking extremely healthy. There were a couple of situations in this game where he got outside the pocket and he ran for some big first downs in there, and you could see the way he was moving away from pressure that calf injury has finally subsided. And he had 19 straight completions at one point in this game. He looked in total control, and Mixon also was moving the chains. He had 16 rushes, 87 yards, and the only thing that kind of you're like, okay, maybe they need to work on it is Irv Smith had a bad fumble, and you weren't about that tight end position for them. But the Cincinnati Bengals have turned the corner, and now with the team, we're really going to find out next couple of weeks who they really are. So they have a big game at home this week against Buffalo. Then they have Houston. Then they're at Baltimore in a big AFC North battle, Pittsburgh, and then at Jacksonville. So, they've had their bye in week 7, and they've kind of turned the corner. Very dangerous team. And I think, you've got to watch them as they go into the playoffs. And they have no fear going into Arrowhead or any of these places. So the AFC North is very interesting because all the teams have winning records, and it's going to be a fight to the finish. Speaking of the AFC North, Ryan, this division, you got to talk about this team. They're sending it at the right time. The Baltimore Ravens get it done, 31-24 in Arizona. Yes, Arizona is one of the worst teams in the league at 1-7. But when you watch this game, lot of balance from the Ravens. They're getting back to that physicality. Todd Monken's their new offense coordinator. He said, yeah, he's going to throw the ball all over the place. But they're getting back to that physical Ravens style in terms of running the football and letting that defense get their thing done. Gus Edwards, 19 rushes, 80 yards, 3 touchdowns. Lamar Jackson really didn't have to throw it a lot of short passes, 18-27, 157, 1 TD. And their schedule coming up kind of sets up real nice for them. They play 6 of their last 9 at M&T, and Lamar is 26-8 in his career at home.
Yeah, they didn't turn the ball over either. Which is big. So they're taking care of the football. Again, Jackson, pedestrian, 18-27, like you said, 157 a touch, no picks. Gus Edwards with the big day. They mixed in. Lamar didn't even have to run it all that much, like you said. But collectively, they ran it 29 times for 130 yards. But again, passed it 27, rushed it 29.
Yeah.
That's what you expect. The balance, turn it over to your defense, defense played. I mean, not spectacularly, but they played well enough. Um,
Yeah, yeah, they allowed him to get some points at the end.
yeah,
McBride had kind of a garbage time touchdown.
yeah,
Now, the guy you really got, the Ravens, Geno Stone, has really stepped up. He leads the NFL in interceptions. He had one this week. He has 5 interceptions on the season.
yeah. And I mean, if they can keep playing like this defensively, they did let the Cardinals run on them a little bit, 32 times for 129 yards. Um, but it's the Cardinals, like you said, 1-7 season's basically over. Um, Joshua Dobbs tries to do what he can, but again, you expect a team like Baltimore to win a game like this because it's tough to win in the NFL on the road. But big win for them on the road.
Yeah, and now fun games coming up. Two playoff caliber teams. You have Seattle coming to Baltimore this week. We'll see how that one turns out. Then the Baltimore is going to face Cleveland. In the Art Modell Bowl. They have Cincinnati, and then at the Chargers, and then they finally have their bye week 13. So
Yeah.
they have some games coming up. As long as they can keep Lamar healthy, as you said, Ronnie Stanley, their big left tackle, and their defense playing well, this team's going to be pretty dangerous down the stretch. Now, in another right down the Beltway, and this was a big battle, and all my Eagles folks here in Philadelphia area, all my relatives and their season ticket holders are all jumping up down, telling me their Eagles are the best and all that. They're 7-1. It was a good victory over Washington, 38-31, where Jalen Hurts was 29 of 38, 319 yards, 4 TDs, no interceptions. He overcame that knee injury and had a huge game. Him and A.J. Brown, who had 8 catches for 130 yards, 2 TDs. And, this Eagles team is rolling. There's still some things in that back end they need to clean up. I think they were trying to get Kevin Byard acclimated in this game, and Blankenship had a good interception. But overall, good solid win for the Eagles, and they didn't look past the Commanders and let what happened to them against the Jets happen to them after moving towards this big game against Dallas this week.
Yeah, I mean, a little concerned. The only thing that I could nitpick at is they only ran the ball 22 times for 59 yards, and their bread and butter it seemed like was running the football, and they haven't been able to do it a lot lately. But I mean, hell, if you can't stop the passing game, and we know it's a passing league, and AJ Brown went off, um, why would you get away from it? But again, DeAndre Swift, 16 carries, 57 yards. He had the touchdown. You might want to see Philadelphia run a little bit more. But again, I mean, they've struggled with Washington the last 3 times they played them, or the last 4 times they.
Yes.
So, it's you can always learn from a game like this. Good win on the road, though. Same old thing with Washington. They just cannot finish games out.
Yeah, they always snatched defeat from the jaws of victory, and it. The only, if we look at this Eagles team, you're right. They passed up and down the field. AJ Brown had a huge game, and Devontae Smith had 7 catches on 7 targets, 99 yards. He also had a touch too. The only thing you say, okay, the Eagles need to work on, and I was surprised by this. You know, the Eagles had one of the best pass rushes in the defensive in NFL, and then Washington's line's been Swiss cheese, where the point of Howell has almost been sacked on a record pace this year, almost 100 times. Everybody's thinking the Eagles only got to him one time in this game, so you know they did have some injuries on their defensive line to Jalen Carter. We'll see how he comes back. I think he has a back injury. They're going to need him down a stretch, and then the Eagles also had 2 fumbles inside the 3 yard line where they could not punch in it. So good win for the Philadelphia Eagles, and they're just hoping to play Dallas, get this done and over with, and then get to their bye. And then that'll help kind of get the Eagles ready for it. They have a killer stretch coming up. After their bye, they have at KC, they have Buffalo, San Francisco, who I still think's got going to be able to say something, at Dallas, at Seattle, and then they have the Giants in Arizona to end the season. So until they get to those last 3 games, they have a very tough schedule, and we're going to really find out who this Eagles team is.
Yeah, I mean that's brutal. You almost feel like they probably won't get through that stretch unscathed. I could see one or two losses in there. It's going to be a battle of attrition as the season goes on. Hopefully they can keep their health. It'll be, get past Dallas, and then we'll see what happens. But you're almost guaranteed that they're probably not going to come out of that gauntlet unscathed a little bit.
Yes, and last year a lot of people were saying, including myself, they're not playing anybody, they're not playing any quality quarterbacks. Well, this year we're really going to see if this Eagles team has the mettle to kind of, yes, right now they have that number one ranking, but we know this is not college football, and they're going to have to
Yeah.
prove it on the field. So it's going to be exciting to see in terms of them. We'll jump around here. Another game you got to talk about. We can briefly talk about it. Is Carolina will not be joining the 2008 Detroit Lions in infamy of not winning a game. They get it done. They beat the Houston Texans 15-13, and when I look at this, Ryan, you're a big college football guy, and this is the number one quarterback versus number two quarterback selected, and how do you think C.J. Stroud played, and also Bryce Young, who was the number one overall pick coming out of Alabama? He led Carolina to their first victory.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think either one of them played bad. C.J. Stroud was 16 to 24, 140 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. It was evident that Texans were trying to run the ball a little bit more. They had 30 carries for 110 yards. Again, Bryce Young, 22 of 31, 235 yards, touchdown, no picks. So I thought they played well. It's just like with I know that it was 15-13, so this game was just as ugly as the Giants Jets game.
Oh yes, don't
Yeah,
worry about that in a second.
but Carolina 24 carries, 44 yards. It was going to come down to who had the ball last, and it did. Um, this could be a learning moment for D'Amico Ryan's team. Obviously Carolina gets off to Schneid with the victory. It'll see how that propels them going forward. But again, Houston sitting at 3-4, still in the mix.
So are
Yeah, it's not time to press the panic button yet, but you have to win these types of games in the NFL against somebody like Carolina. They didn't get it done, but hopefully they can learn from this.
Yeah, and they're a good young team learning how to win. And you see a lot of these young coaches and teams gelling together, and they learn to win these types of games and close them out, as we were talking about. That's what the good coach quarterback combination does. And Ryan's right now and Stroud, they look like they're trending that direction. So, tough loss for them, but you're glad that Carolina gets to win, and everybody can stop with the tanking talk and enough already. We'll just see how the draft goes and who's going to be there. And somebody will probably trade up anyway to get that number one pick, whether
Yeah.
it's Caleb Williams or somebody else. Now, one of the interesting, and we just talked about it, this was a heartburn special, Ryan. It's, you're almost better off just turning it on the last 5, 10, almost like an NBA game. Turn it on the last 5, 10 minutes and you're good, because in the Battle of Jersey, you got the New York Jets beating, well, if you want to say beating, they won. They beat the Giants 13-10 in a game that featured almost an NFL record 22 punts in a game, Ryan. It was pitiful to watch. And then, Tyrod Taylor, it's bad enough he's playing. They bring out this guy, Tommy DeVito. And Ryan, I'm like, I usually pride myself in knowing every player and where they came from. I'm like, what college is this guy from? Is this Danny DeVito's son? What's going on here? And then DeVito, I'll just give you his numbers before I let you comment. 2 of 7 for -1 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, and he was sacked twice. I mean, that poor kid, they threw him in the fire.
Yeah, Tommy DeVito played at Syracuse, by the way.
Okay.
I don't think
Nice.
I've ever seen collectively passing 6 of 14 for -9 yards. I don't think I've ever seen that in an NFL football game before. But they ran it 52 times for 203 yards. I want some statistician out there to what that must be the first in NFL history. But again, at 22 punts, um, the only good thing about this for the Jets was Zach Wilson, 17 to 36, touchdown, but no picks. He only ran it 22 times for 58 yards. Um, Jets did turn it over twice. I think. I think there were two fumbles, or but again, ugly
Yeah.
game. But the Jets. If you'd have told me after Aaron Rodgers got hurt, LV, that this team would be sitting 4-3, I would have like called you a liar to your face. And the thing of it is, if Zach Wilson can play like this with that kind of defense that they have, they are going to be in the thick of a wild card berth.
Yeah, and they can win ugly. I still remember one of the old Bears teams back in the day, and this is before he flourished in the NFL. But Doug Flutie was their quarterback, and they kind of Flutie was handing the ball off, making a play here and there, and they just rode that defense into the playoffs. And when I look at this Jets team, yes, extremely ugly for them. They had 8 penalties in this game. They were only 2 of 15 on third down, but they got it done when it needed to matter. In particularly, Wilson hits that big throw to Lazard, and they get up to the line of scrimmage with 1 second clock it, and then Zerline ties the game up, and then Zerline wins it again after a big pass interference penalty to win the game. So, story of two sides here. Now, the Giants, I think they were right in terms of getting rid of Leonard Williams and starting to turn the page towards the future. Rich Quinones, so I do another show with. He's a Giants guy, and he's just been outside himself about this Giants team and how they're falling apart. And is Brian Daboll looking like this year's Matt Nagy? You remember Matt Nagy was coach of the year too,
Yep.
and then the next year he falls apart. And in year 3, they're firing the guy. So it's a situation where the Giants are just not getting it done. And poor Dable, he decides to kick that field goal. Graham Gano, you're like, all right, he'll make a 35-yarder. Not to ice the game, but it would have been a 6-point lead, and he
Yeah.
shanks it. And poor Gano in the locker room afterwards, the cameras are all on him.
Yeah, I mean it's about to get worse, I think, for the Giants. I mean, Barkley had a fantastic day, 36 for 128. I mean, he didn't have a touchdown rushing. Um, I mean, Tommy DeVito, I guess, had that rushing touchdown. So, I mean, but you can't expect to go 6 for 14 collectively passing for -9 yards and win a football game. They ran at 52. I mean, I don't know where they turn. I know they expect Daniel Jones to come back. I don't know if it's going to make a big difference. Um, we'll have to see where the Giants go from here, but they
Yeah,
just can't get it together, man. And if
yeah. And they move
Dable,
forward.
Dable might be on the hot seat, to be quite honest with
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy after one season, and we'll just see from there. Now, the Jets. This is a playoff contender pretender special. They're going to host the LA Chargers, who we just saw win on Sunday Night Football, and then they're at the Raiders, at Buffalo, Miami, Atlanta, Houston, at Miami, Washington, at Cleveland, at New England to end their season. So there are some winnable games there. And, Aaron Rodgers, it's typical him. He's just getting everybody a little excited. I wonder why he's doing all his pregame and pre-throwing, in a stadium in front of people and not at some facility somewhere. You're trying to get people excited at the possibility of him coming back from an Achilles injury. I just don't see it happening. But he's been warming up, and everybody's saying if Wilson could just hold it down, the Jets will be in the playoffs, which is insane. I still think they can make the playoffs, but thinking they're going to get back Aaron Rodgers, that's crazy.
you. Yeah, I mean, Aaron Rodgers probably coming out of his dark room doing shrooms or whatever he's doing, trying to get better. I mean, I don't know, but ladies and gentlemen, he is not coming back this year. There's no way he is coming back this year.
Not at 40 years old. He's
No,
not. No, no,
no.
no. Everybody talks about Akers, and Akers was in his 20s, and he was a running back. And we just saw how easy it is for these older guys to get hurt their Achilles. Just look at what happened to Kirk Cousins. you know, that kind of was a run of the mill sack there, and then he comes up hopping off the field. So, you know, Aaron Rodgers, he has a 2 year deal with the Jets, and you know, he should look forward to next season and kind of move on from there. So, you know, yeah, it'll keep Jets fans kind of have the hope, but I just don't see it happening. Now,
No,
another game before we start talking about next week's slate. This team has really, they may be one of the best in the league. And you know, I know the Steelers are kind of down, but the Jacksonville Jaguars get it done in Pittsburgh, which is a tough place to win. They win 20-10. Trevor Lawrence, 24-32, 292 yards, one TD, one interception. And you know, they knocked Kenny Pickett out the game with rib injury. And the big player in this game to me was Travis Etienne. You know, he looked like his old college self. He had 24 rushes, 79 yards, and he had a big 56-yard catch and run that was just a highlight reel type play. So good win for Jacksonville. They're now 6-2, and they're in the mix in AFC.
yeah. I mean, the weather conditions were kind of horrible. So, I mean, Etienne had himself a day. Um, Trevor had an efficient day. I mean, he did throw the one pick, but yeah, I mean, their defense is now coming together. They're solid. They did. This is a kind of ugly win that you sort of need on the road. You know, it doesn't matter how you want it. They went into Pittsburgh. A lot of people were favoring Pittsburgh in this game. Young team, Jacksonville going on the road into Pittsburgh. But yeah, Jacksonville's starting to find themselves a little bit of a groove going. And yeah, they as long as they can have balance like this, they ran it 30 times, they passed it 32 times. And again, the defense is young, strong, playing with confidence. So, yeah, I want to see what Jacksonville does from here. And then when you take a look at Pittsburgh, I mean, no, they knocked Kenny Pickett out of the game. Mitchell Trubisky came in and he threw the two picks, and they couldn't run the
Terrible.
football. Yeah, they couldn't run the football for squat. So I think Pittsburgh, I think, is now you're going to see them regress a little bit. I know everybody was excited that they were 4-2 and whatnot, but um, I think they're in a little bit of trouble going forward now.
Yeah, well, I think another 9-8 season maybe on the horizon or something like that. You know, and we'll see. They lost Minka Fitzpatrick to a hamstring injury, and that's a big loss for them. Obviously, they're going to lean on that defense, and we'll see how they go from there. Now, Jacksonville, they have their bye, and then they can get ready for the Niners, and they have some AFC South games coming down the stretch. But I clearly think they're going to win that division, and then they'll just go from there. And if they're hosting, you know, there's not a huge home field advantage down there, but you know, they definitely not want to go on the road because they're definitely a different team on the road. So they're another one. The
Yeah.
Steelers, they have Tennessee in an old school AFC Central matchup where they're going to host Tennessee. Then they have Green Bay, who's just fallen apart. And then they're at Cleveland and at Cincinnati in two big divisional games. So, uh, last game before we look at the next week, Green Bay. What is going on with them? You know, everybody thought they're 2-1. Jordan Love is looking like, okay, he's the next quarterback in the progression from Favre to Rodgers, and he's going to be the next quarterback for, you know, next 10 years or so. And to me, Jordan Love does not look ready for National Football League. He's really regressed, and it's a situation where you wonder, can Green Bay survive with him? He has 5 straight games with an interception. He was only 24-41, 229 yards, one TD, one interception. And much like Mahomes, his receivers are not helping him at all. So Green Bay seems to be in a lot of trouble, and they're a team that's kind of fallen by the wayside. And surprisingly, we talked about at the top, you know, Minnesota Vikings now are 4-4, and they're in the mix.
Let's be honest. Packers stink. I mean, they do.
Yes, they do.
2-5. They look discombobulated. I mean, for God's sakes, Aaron Jones, 7 carries, 29 yards. AJ Dillon, 6 carries, 11 yards. This is supposed to be the strength of your team this year. Um, you're right, Jordan Love. I mean, you threw it up 41 times. You're not going to win games throwing it up that much. Again, Kirk Cousins. You hate to see him get hurt. He was efficient. The only thing about the Minnesota now, with Cousins going down, they ran the ball 31 times for 62 yards. That's a 2 yard per carry average. That's not good.
Yeah, Madison. They've been waiting on Madison, and
Yeah,
he was always second fiddle to Dalvin Cook, and Dalvin Cook was an engine, and Madison 16 rushes, 31 yards. Akers, they brought him in. Maybe they might want to give him a look. The funny thing, Ryan, is we talk about the trade deadline. Dalvin Cook is out there to be had. I'm hearing from the Jets. The Jets are dangling him out there. He's kind of a spare part for them. Brees Hall is doing a great job for them, and maybe somebody will step up and take Dalvin Cook.
yeah. I mean, would Dalvin Cook want to come back to Minnesota?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Probably not. Probably not.
I thought maybe the Vikings would make a pitch for like Fournette because Fournette was out there, but we know that he is going to the Bills now. So
Yes.
that's a big pickup for the Bills. But the Vikings are now going to have to rely on this run game a whole hell of a lot more. And you can't rush it 31 times for 62 yards. Whoever's back there at quarterback, they're going to need to take the pressure off whoever's back there. So they're going to need to find. Now, they had their first rushing touchdown of the year, ladies and gentlemen. That was an
Wow.
unbelievable stat. Yeah, they had their first rushing touchdown this year, and they are going to have to lean on this run game more. So they're going to have to try and figure something out in that regard.
Yeah. And you're listening to Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on 1029 The Game and the Broad Street South Network. I'm here with Ryan Neff, and we just gave our weekly remix of week 8 around the National Football League and a lot of big news and notes. We talked about the throwback jerseys, the upsets, particularly the Broncos over Kansas City. And now we turn the page and kind of look at week 9 around the National Football League. Right? It's crazy. This is just going way too fast. And every year I say around the end of February, the Super Bowl's over, and you're like, oh man, what am I going to watch now? You know, maybe it's this XFL USFL merger. I just, as hardcore as I am, I just can't get in those games because you don't know who these guys are. All right, quite frankly, you don't know who they are. It's not like the old USFL where they have Reggie White and Steve Young and
Yep.
Jim Kelly and people you knew. Unfortunately, it's something to watch, but you don't know who these guys are. So all the luck to them in this merger, and I hear the indoor football leagues coming back. I went to some of those games. That's nice to take the kids to, but once the NFL ends, it's like, oh, you bring the box of tissues out. So,
Yeah.
I got to enjoy it while it's here. Looking at this week 9. Now, this is an interesting one, Ryan. You have the Tennessee Titans, who we were just talking about, and I was almost remiss. We didn't bring this young man up, and I got to do it now. He's going to be my game ball winner for this week, and Will Levis. Penn State people always told me, said, well, our best quarterback went to Kentucky. And you know what? Will Levis he was incredible in this game for the Titans. 4 touchdowns in it. And now the Titans will travel to Pittsburgh. And I'm going to give them a puncher's chance with Derrick Henry running the football and Levis going back out there because they're not going back to Tannehill. I think the Titans – and particularly if Kenny Pickett does not play in this game and it's Trubisky, I think the Titans are going to go into Pittsburgh and spring a trap on the Steelers Thursday night.
Yeah, I mean, Tomlin always has a way to get his guys up and win these types of games, but this is a different situation now. I don't think Pickett will be able to go. And if it's Trubisky, forget it. Tennessee, they know what they have with Levis now. DeAndre Hopkins is happy probably because he went off. Yeah, I just don't see Pittsburgh. They might slow him down a little bit. They're not going to blow him out by any means, but I just Pittsburgh defense is not that great. I can see this game being like a 27-20 game in favor of Tennessee.
Yeah, as long as Levis does he stays within the game plan and he doesn't get too enamored with throwing the football over the barn, and they lean first and foremost on Derrick Henry and that offensive line. They should be okay in this one. And I will agree with you that Tennessee, a lot of people thought they were packing it in, but they're in the fight in the AFC South for that second spot. We know that Jacksonville's probably going to win the top spot, but they're fighting for those playoff spots. So this is a playoff eliminator, and we'll see. but
Yeah.
I will go with the Titans too. Now, this is cool. I know we've been complaining about these games overseas, and the NFL's talking about possibly moving a team over there, which would throw just a bunch of logistics in a situation. But it's always fun to wake up early Sunday morning and there's a football game, and this is going to be one of the top ones out there. You have the Miami Dolphins, a team that it's a track team. They're running up and down the field. I guess this will be an artificial surface over in Germany. Hopefully it'll be a fast track. You get Waddle going and Tariq Hill going. And then you have Kansas City limping in there after the game we just talked about where they surprisingly lost to the Broncos. So I've been back and forth in this one. I'm thinking Tua in Miami is going to get the job done, and Tariq Hill's going to get his revenge in this one. It's probably going to be a close game. I'd say definitely take the over, though.
Yeah, I mean, I could be a homer if I wanted to, but to be quite honest with you, LV, I don't like where Kansas City's headed right now. And if you think they're going to get it figured out in 6 days or 7 days, you can forget it because they are going to have like the complete opposite performance of what they just had in Denver. Um, Now, Miami's defense isn't, I mean, they're okay. Do I think Kansas City is going to be that bad offensively again? No. But I just think Miami offensively too much. Kansas City's defense will keep it in them for a while. I could see this being like a 30-26 kind of game in favor of Miami.
Yeah, and when I look at this one, a big key is the Miami offensive line is extremely beat up. They're hoping maybe to get Teron Armstead, their left tackle back, and they've had a lot of injuries on that line. Isaiah Wynn, he's probably not going to go. Connor Williams, they're hoping to get him back, and you're right, Spagnuolo trying to way to get them, take advantage of that area. And another big area person, actually, Ryan, for Miami Dolphins is Jalen Ramsey. Played this week for the first time for the Miami Dolphins. He did have an interception, and they're probably going to have him. I don't think he's going to just shadow anybody for Kansas City. I mean, who do you pick? Rice. Rice dropped a couple passes too.
Yeah.
So but Jalen Ramsey's a big key for that defense, and we'll see if Fangio can spring a trap here on Patrick Mahomes, and maybe Mrs. Kelsey, maybe she can get some of that chunky soup, chicken noodle soup over to Patrick Mahomes to help him get rid of the flu. And the interesting thing is, will Taylor Swift travel over to Germany? So I'm sure everybody's waiting with bated breath to see that one. So big game, early Sunday, 9:30 Sunday morning, but I'm going with the Dolphins in this one. The next game we'll touch on. Um, this is probably going to be the backup quarterback battle. You have the Minnesota Vikings, who will probably have Jaron Hall starting this one against the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons, they went to Taylor Heineke yesterday, and the veteran stepped up. We talked all along about Desmond Ritter and his struggles, and he has potential concussion, and they clear him in a game. And Arthur Smith says, go sit down. And Heineke comes in there and tears it up for the Falcons, and I have a feeling he's going to start this game for them. So this is going to be an interesting one to see if Minnesota can keep this train going. As we said, they're now 4-4. No Jefferson in this one. I think they will try to lean on a run game with Madison and Akers, and Atlanta lost Grady Jarrett in this one, so they don't have their big run stuff in the will. So I think Minnesota will do just enough. It'll probably be a close game. Look for T.J. Hawkinson to have a big game. Minnesota wins this one, very close one. I'll probably say field goal game like 23-20, and Atlanta kind of tries to figure out who they are because they're kind of an up and down team.
Yeah, I think with the Kirk Cousins injury, I think that they're going to use this as a rallying cry. Again, Minnesota's going to have to lean on the run game to take off the pressure. Whoever's back there for quarterback, in Atlanta, Desmond Ritter, like you said, he got cleared from concussion protocol. Arthur Smith was like, "No, I did not like what I saw." Puts in Taylor Heineke, but I too like Minnesota on the road. This is going to be like a 23-17 kind of game. This isn't going to be a high scoring game at all.
Yeah. Now let's start getting another one of our marquee matches we got to talk about it. The Dallas Cowboys come to Philadelphia. This is a huge battle, and the Eagles fans are going to be waiting, and the weather's getting colder outside, and we know how Dak plays away from the Jerry Dome, and it's a big situation for the Eagles to say, we are the biggest lion in the jungle of the NFC as well as the whole NFL, and Dallas is coming in there at 5-2. Um, they beat their chest at home. They're 3-0, undefeated, but this is a big game on the road because they're only 2-2 on the road, and he's had difficulty getting the ball to CeeDee Lamb in this one, and it's going to be interesting to see how that Eagles defensive line, who Jalen Carter's a little beat up, their big rookie, and we'll see if he's out there. But they have just so many pieces on that defensive line with Jordan Davis and Fletcher Cox and Sweat and the rest of those guys. They can get after the passer. We know last year they had 70 sacks. And I think that's going to be the big thing in this game. I think you're going to be able to get some pressure on Dak Prescott. We talked about Tony Pollard. He's a good running back, but he's not that featured running back, and they'll be able to shut him down and then roll coverage with Slay and the rest of those guys over the top with CeeDee Lamb, and that'll kind of keep him in check. I think the Eagles win this one, and they further cement themselves as the number one seed in the NFC.
Yeah, I mean the only thing that can say is that collectively has an 8-3 record versus Philly. Um, but going into Philadelphia, it's a late start, 4:30. No, it's they're they're better defensively than the Cowboys are. They're better offensively than the Cowboys are. Um, do I think that the Eagles are going to blow them out, especially after what I saw against the Redskins twice? Um, no. I think the Cowboys will probably hang around to the fourth quarter, but they're not going to have an answer for A.J. Brown. This is going to be like a 33-24 kind of game. Favor of the Eagles.
Yeah, it sounds like Ryan likes it over for all you gambling folks out there. And the line, I'm not sure about the line right now, but I would think the Eagles be a favorite, probably about 6 or so. We'll have to see how that is as the week goes on. Now, the Sunday night football battle. This is a huge one. This is a playoff eliminator, and this is a show me something type of game. The Buffalo Bills, who had a big win on Thursday night, we didn't really talk about that game. They hung on and beat the Bucks, and Josh Allen, he's looking a little bit more comfortable. He's getting the ball out to Davis and Diggs and spreading the football around. They're still not running the football with any authority. The Bills bring in Leonard Fournette this week. I don't know if he's going to be able to suit up for him right away by Sunday night, but this is a huge game in Cincinnati. And when you look at this Bengals team, they're 4-3 now, and I really think they're establishing themselves as an extremely dangerous team. Now they're going to have to be able to block AJ Epinesa and Oliver for the Bills. They're big sack guys because Burrow's still recovering from that calf injury, but he's looking good moving around. But I definitely think against a Bills secondary that's very vulnerable, that you're going to see Jamar Chase have a huge game in this one. T. Higgins have a big game in this one. You're going to see Cincinnati win this one. I'll go with the score of like 27 to 24. It may be a little high scoring, but you'll definitely see Cincinnati come through at home.
Yeah, Buffalo's defense has been a little suspect here in the middle part of the season. Cincinnati finding their groove. They've turned the page. They've turned the corner. Buffalo just seems to be doing enough. And then they have a stinker or two. I know you said 27-24. I think Cincinnati buries them, to be quite honest with you.
Oh,
I think I can see this Cincinnati 34, Buffalo 20.
yeah, that's it. And we both kind of feel the same way that the Bills are a little too inconsistent at this point. Yeah, Josh Allen, one week he'll have a nice game, but then he'll start forcing the football. And the way the Bengals defense, a lot of people don't talk about Henderson and Hubbard and the rest of those guys at defense. They can get after people, and he'll make some mistakes. So that's going to be an interesting one to look at. The last game we'll kind of look at is the Monday Night Football game next week. The Chargers are at the Jets. This is a situation where I'll give you my pick real quick. Herbert won that game last night, but they still kind of scary, the Chargers, in terms of their inconsistency. And but this Jets team, Wilson's going to make mistakes, and Derwin James and Bosa or somebody going to make a huge play in this one. It may be a low scoring affair, but I think the Chargers beat New York.
Yeah, I mean, Chargers seem to be finding themselves a little bit. The Jets can't score points against the Giants. So,
Yeah.
um, you know, the Chargers going to blow them out. That remains to be seen. I think the Jets will make it interesting by half, but then the Chargers in the second half pull away. So this is going to be like a 27-17, 27-14 kind of game.
Yeah, hopefully it's a good watch, and with these primetime games, you want good matchups. We know over the last couple of years, some of there are some stinkers out there, and you're like, all right, I'm turning this thing off and go to bed. So appreciate Ryan being with me for another week, and we're going to continue finding out who the pretenders are and who the contenders are, and the season not over for anyone. As I look at the standings, I still would say, even Green Bay 2-5, they could jump back in the mix. I don't think it's going to happen, but they're still alive. And then you have 4 teams that are 3-5, 5 teams that are 3-4, 3 teams 4-4, and all the way up to the Eagles who are 7-1. So there's a lot of teams still in the mix. Don't forget there's 7 playoff spots in each league. So somebody may sneak in there as a wild card, as with a losing record as Tampa did last year, and we'll just see from there. But you've been listening Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on 102.9 The Game and the Broad Street South Network. Appreciate Ryan being on. And Angel, as our producer, is always doing a great job on the ones and twos. We will talk to you next week as we talk about Week 9 around the National Football League.